skipped it and I never saw it.
I mean, I don't blame you because I'm the same type of player of video games here. I always do like skip. Who needs tutorials? And then I'm like, okay, how do I walk in this game?
Well, I skipped it before last time because we had like
Peter, what are you doing?
only a few minutes. Well,
Take a look.
I thought I could like reverse to the right here, then go over there towards that person, and then reverse to the parking space. That
Sounds easy, right? On the paper, it sounds
no,
easy.
It sounds hard, and I'm gonna fail. Then I'm gonna come home, eat some dinner, cry in the shower.
Is your girlfriend like getting suspicious? Like why you always once a week come back like and cry in shower?
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. It's my secret. I'm scared I'm gonna hit this truck. No, there's enough space. I'm gonna take. Oh, I pushed the wrong pedal again. Oh,
That's enough space, man.
This looks good. This looks good. If I'm gonna make this, if I'm gonna do this today, there's a party in my house and everyone is invited, including the chat.
Oh. Okay.
If you can make it today. Wait a minute. That doesn't look too bad.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You need to just turn a little bit more.
Yes. Okay. So, let me take another look. Are you gonna give me like a few more minutes, right?
Chad, what do you think? Should we give him a little bit more time?
Yes.
10 seconds?
Not more. Like, just let me do this one
Okay.
try,
Okay.
and if until I fail or
Okay.
complete it.
Okay.
Oh, that doesn't look too bad.
I mean, you can do it, man. Come on, stop taking so many looks, man. Just do it,
You know,
man.
if
You're on
I-
the good way.
I,
Need to turn more.
I just cannot.
No, keep going,
afford
keep
to
going, keep
fail.
going, keep going, keep going.
Let me go to the front.
Come
a
on,
little
man.
bit.
I have places to be at. I mean, like, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have to be somewhere at 8. And it takes me, like, 40 minutes to drive there from work.
Don't worry. Give me like a few more minutes. You can. In the meantime, you can.
Or maybe I will need to leave you here.
You can. Oh, I'm gonna hit that thing again, right?
That thing. Chat, welcome to the stream about Euro That Thing Simulator 2.
I feel like I can do this, and it makes me so happy.
Peter, just face it. You are not going to make it. Just fail it, and we all can go.
Yeah, I'm scared I'm gonna fail. Whoa! No.
That thing is very close to you.
Yeah, I know. I realized that. I need to make some. No!
And that's it, chat. We did a few solid tries, but yeah,
You can turn on auto.
Something, you can come back to this video and maybe refer to it a little bit to help yourself get started. And today we are going to model. We decided we wanted to make something, but we didn't know what to make, obviously. So I spent a little bit of time going through the different trucks we have, and what kind of part can we model, right? And I thought a good candidate is the W900. Everyone loves the W900. And what can we make for the W900? We can make a visor, but a visor's quite a simple shape, quite plain. Skirts or something like that, same thing, right? And I thought, let's do a bumper, but not any bumper. We're going to do a moose bumper. Now, you guys know these, obviously, grill guards, moose bumpers, rhubars, as they call them in Australia. So we're going to make that, and I think it's a pretty you know, it's going to start simple and definitely get more complicated as we go. So, you know, for beginners, they'll be able to see how to make like that basic box bumper design. But, you know, as you get more advanced, or maybe someone that's already played with modeling a little bit, you can, you know, see how we do the rest of it with the cylinders and all that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, the idea is we're starting with an item that's relatively simple to make and just go through the entire process of how I would approach it. Yeah, I should note that everybody has a different way of working.
absolutely.
My personal preference, of course, is Maya, so I'll be mainly showcasing that, but the principles that I'll be showing you apply to Blender and other tool sets as well. So
Now, these keys that you're going to be using, these are specific to Maya?
yeah, these are
Okay.
shortcuts specific to Maya.
Okay.
But the principles of modeling and the different stages, they carry over between software, so it doesn't matter too much
Okay.
what platform you use.
Right.
Yeah, and the idea behind the series also is we kind of want to open up a little bit more towards the modding scene, right? So that
Yeah, absolutely.
so that
Like, if you
people
guys-
can
yeah.
kind of dive into it themselves as well if they want.
Exactly. Like if you see, for example, on the W900, if there's a, you know, little bit of frame space and you think, man, I'd really like to have a toolbox right there. Here's your opportunity to learn how to make that toolbox and put it in that space. There's probably going to be a multi-episode thing, I'm imagining. I mean, we'll see if you guys have fun today. If you don't have fun, then we'll never do it again. But if you have fun with it, then we'll definitely keep doing it, and we'll do this bumper all the way to the finish. What?
Benny wanted to model a baconator.
Does he?
in the chat.
That's pretty on brand for Betty. We already got burgers in the game. Lots of them.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
Anyways, so yeah, so we can get started whenever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
So right now we have the blank slate. We have the truck in here as well for reference.
So typically when I have a working scene, especially on a project like that, when we have some accessory for an existing truck, I would just duplicate a little working scene where I put as minimal parts in it as possible, just for the speed and workflow.
I guess the more parts you have in Maya, the slower
Yeah,
Maya's gonna
exactly,
be.
exactly. And it's just kind of clutter. So I like a nice clean slate that I start from, and I have a nice spatial reference. And I've also included one of the stock default bumpers that we'll be using simply as a reference for the topology and the poly count, and mostly the size, because typically we would work with CADs or photo scans, but in this case we want to do something completely on our own, so we have full creative freedom, which I honestly love tasks like that. It kind of gets me in a, how do I say it? It's a little bit of a different workflow, and
You get
it
to be
can
more
m-
artistic
exactly,
with it. Yeah, kind of flex
gets
your
my
muscle.
creative side going. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what we'll be doing. So how I always start is a basic blockout phase. So we have a reference created by Standa, our concept artist.
Yeah, you
And-
guys might remember him. He was on stream last year for the Farm Machinery DLC and talking a little bit about how he comes up with the concepts and all that. So this bumper is a concept from him, our very own SCS design.
Exactly. So we will be using that reference
Mm.
and the reference that we already have in the game to create something new. So I just create a basic cube, and I'm just going to, in this stage, create a block out of the same shape. Not worry about details or anything else at this stage, just fill up the space and then worry about detailing it later. So this is why this kind of reference comes in handy,
Okay.
just so that we know where things should be in the space. And a lot of these bumpers would be similar, I assume.
No, they can vary greatly. You know, some of them will have like this big Texas square kind of
Mhm.
style bumper, like we've done in the concept. Some will have a very small, almost like logging kind of style bumper with the bars built off of that in different ways. So yeah, they can vary quite greatly. But
Okay, I see.
this gives us a good starting point. Either
Exactly.
way.
So I'm just going to, misclick sometimes, but yeah. Align my model on the halfway point, and then freeze the transform so that I can make a instance of it. And
Sorry, you're going a little fast here. So
yeah, all right.
maybe you can explain a little more with what keys you're pressing and what you mean by instance, for example.
So an instance, of an object.
Mhm.
It's basically a duplicate object that, well, I think it's easier if I show you. I've
Okay.
mirrored it
Mhm.
on the x-axis. So being an instance means these two objects are interlinked. So if I grab the vertex of one object and move it,
Okay, so you basically created a mirrored, because we know that this is going to be a symmetrical design.
exactly,
You basically create a mirrored image to cut your work
Yeah.
time in half.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
You wouldn't want to do the same thing twice. It would
Right.
make sense. I mean, you could just work on one half without the instance and just duplicate it at the end. But
Right. It's better to see it, I think, probably, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Maybe you can tell us a little more about the keys you're hitting, because you're very quick with that. I think the keys aren't even
yeah. I'll
staying on
try to
screen
slow
very
down.
long.
I'm still fired up from working. So
Oh, yeah, you had a bit of a workout at the gym before you came in?
yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So trying to slow the blood flow at this point in time. But I mean, you can see the keybinds at the
Yep.
bottom left.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, all I've done at this point is just create a cube, scaled it down, put it in the correct position
Mhm.
based on the reference, and just duplicated it with an instance link. So
Okay.
right, and it looks very rudimentary. It's just a box, but
I mean,
don't-
this is actually what a lot of bumpers just look like.
yeah, but the edges should be more round. Of course, we can
Yeah,
see
yeah.
some cutouts here, but as I said, in this stage, we do not worry at all about the details. This is my blockout phase where I just want to make sure that my proportions and the scale are correct. And I would say that's the most important process, especially when you're designing something from scratch like this, where you don't really follow some real life reference. It's very easy to make something unrealistic. So you really want to be careful when you're doing something fully your own creation.
Right.
Yeah.
We have 5150 in the YouTube chat. Do you know who he is?
No, I'm not.
He makes
aware.
some insane 3D models, entire
Nice.
trucks.
Is that a modder?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And he's telling us that we should tackle something more complex, which I think is very easy for him to say.
Of course, I think if there's a lot of interest in these streams, we can keep them going and get more and more complex as time goes on. But you have to keep in mind there's only so much that we can do in an hour. Because keep
Yeah.
in mind, on an actual project, we spend months and months of full-time work.
Mhm.
So
How long would you say if you were to model a truck? What is like, not including like the other behind the scenes stuff, but like just the modeling part? What does that take to do the exterior?
depends on my current project that I'm working on.
Mhm.
On the exterior alone, I spent 3 months. And then on the interior, I would spend something similar,
Okay.
depending on how many accessories there are, depending on a lot of factors. But typically, a player-driven model takes months and months of work. So it's not easy at all to.
So if we were to
cover in one
quantify this
stream.
into live streams, we would probably be here for a couple years.
Yeah, that's why we chose something simpler.
Right, right.
Yeah. So anyways, looking at this concept, I can see that we kind of have a little bit of a slant here. So that would mean I have to bevel that, and I would put this edge a little further back and maybe make it a little like that.
We have one person in the Twitch chat asking, why don't you use Blender?
It's just my personal preference because when I first got started working in 3D,
Mhm.
I was training at a movie studio, and Maya is the industry standard in the VFX industry.
Okay.
So all the knowledge I got is basically ingrained in my mind from those years, and
Right.
it's very difficult for me to switch to Blender.
So how long have you actually been modeling for?
I've been dabbling it as a hobby since high school, which was 12 years ago.
So you actually started modeling as a hobby. Was that like
Yeah.
to mod some game or something, or?
No, just messing around first in SketchUp, I believe, and then in Blender, and then 3ds Max. So I do have
SketchUp,
some.
you're taking me back.
Yeah, that's that's ancient stuff. But then I dropped it for a long time, and then I think around 2016, 2017,
Mhm.
I enrolled in that VFX animation course. and
Okay,
that's
since
when
you
I
already had
started.
kind of some experience with it, you enjoyed
Exactly.
it, and you thought, well, I can make a
Yeah.
job out of this.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay.
Right. So we're making the right side corner now.
And I know we've talked about this before, but how long have you actually been at SES now?
2.5 years now. I think there'll be 3 full years in July.
Nice. And when did you make that senior title that's in your tag? If Benny, you can pop that up again.
Last January. So
Look at that senior 3D graphic designer. Nice.
Yeah, it's been my dream. I wanted to get to it before I turned 30. So it was a life goal achieved.
It sounds so professional, not like my made-up title.
No. You are coordinating this modeling stream. So
That's right. Yeah.
props to Mark for the idea.
Well, we kind of came up with it together, and Benny.
That's
All
true.
three of us, we sort of brainstormed this one, this concept. And Miro, of course.
Someone's mentioning that we have Blender tools for people who use Blender. That's true. So if you are looking into starting your own mod and you're familiar with Blender, you can also use that. You don't need Maya at all. But I have a company license for Maya, so it makes sense for me to use it, which I'm very grateful for because as, I quite enjoy working with Maya. Okay, I'm just gonna duplicate this part and move it somewhere. I think it should come something like that, aligned with the grill, right? Because
I
you've
would-
seen these a lot in real life.
I would maybe
I would
kind of
imagine.
center it with that, see how the grill has that sort of bevel in it. I would almost kind of center it with that, so maybe move it more towards the driver's side.
Something like that.
Maybe, yeah, something like that. Not too far.
Yeah, okay. Because we
'Cause
don't
you need
want to
space
cover
for the
light.
headlight. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to make sense realistically. Okay.
We are getting complaints that we are going too fast
Okay.
once again. So we really, I think we should really talk about like what keys you're pressing, what you're doing with each move.
Yeah.
We still have a lot to go, thankfully, so we can get into it. So tell us about, how you're making these shapes, how you're,
Well, the approach I'm using right now is called box modeling, where if you're here on your poly modeling tab or the equivalent in Blender, you can start with your primitives. So if you click on any shape, it will generate something for you. And then if I press W, I can move it in space. If I press E, I can rotate it. And if I press R, I can scale it. But if I hold right click, this would be the equivalent of edit mode, I believe, in Blender. And now I can choose edges, vertices, faces, or just multi. And now you can see that we can select different parts of the mesh and edit them individually. So that can be quite convenient. And it's really simple, actually. I mean, 3D modeling has, I would say, quite a steep learning curve. But once you master it, it's very easy, especially when you have good references on hand. To me, at this point, it's kind of like second nature. I don't even really think about the models I'm making. I just get into flow state.
so if you have like some kind of CAD reference or something like that, you're just jamming
then
out,
it's-
listening to music.
exactly, yeah. Which sometimes can be boring, honestly, working from CAD. So that's why I really enjoy tasks like this, where I kind of have to get my own creative direction going, really think about the next step. CAD modeling is a little bit different because there you have the perfect reference, but you're mostly thinking about how to reduce the topology in a way that the polygon makes sense for the final product. Yeah. But basically what I've done here, from this pillar, I've just duplicated this one,
Mhm.
and now we're trying to make this piece here.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm just gonna use the same object, and to me, from this photo, it looks like we kind of have a little bit of a bend here, so we kind of want to pop this a little like that. And then I will select the top face and press Control E, which is a shortcut for extrude. And now we're given some options here. You can see what the offset would do, which we don't want. We can get the thickness, which just basically means it's moving it along its normal axis. Or we could just go to the move mode, which is W, and I can just move it in space.
Okay, but that doesn't actually create the same bend with it. But if we were to extrude, it would. Well, I guess either if we were to extrude or it would be the same,
Well,
right?
I will just lift it up first to the height, so I
Okay.
can see from and if we look at our reference bumper that's already in the game, it should come somewhere along this line with the grill. So I'll align it first on the Y-axis, and then I'll go to edge modes and maybe push it back a little. So now we have that bend that we were looking for.
Okay, perfect. We have a couple questions here that I think are kind of relevant. One from our Twitch chat, Pixel, is wondering if there is a poly limit per truck that you have to stay under.
Yeah, typically there is. I think for the exterior, we try not to go over 100K with all the different options that you can make.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean like literally all of the accessories and the truck itself has to be 100K. It means like the configuration in the game that you can put together has to be around that limit.
Okay.
But the Maya scene itself will have sometimes even 300, 400K.
Really?
Yeah, depending, especially if you have a tuning pack as well. So
Right,
it can
right.
balloon a lot. That's why I always make a simpler working scene before I start any task like that. It's not such a rigid polygon limit, but we try to keep within the confines, of course. And I think the interior hangs somewhere around 80,000. So yeah, that's our basic sort of poly count limit. Sometimes we need more, sometimes we need less. It really depends on the project.
Okay.
Yeah. So another thing I forgot to do is typically when I make a new model, I always like to replace the default material with a Fong or something very reflective.
Okay.
The reason I do this is so that, as you can see,
Oh, you
it's
can-
more shiny. You can
right.
better see the normals. So when we get errors, it will be more apparent. So having a Fong is very, very, very useful. I don't know why I duplicated it. Okay. Yeah. So as
That
you
was so fast for me. I hope you guys caught it.
you can always roll it back.
Just
but yeah,
replay this video back at like 0.1 times speed, and
if
yeah,
there's
you
some
got it.
questions, just let me know, because I haven't been paying much attention to the chat. I'm sorry. Right, but as you can see, we're still in our blockout phase. It looks very, very basic, especially if I turn on the wireframe. It's not something you would want to put in the game. But as I said, we're not worried about details at all.
Mhm.
We are just filling up the space to make sure that everything is proportionally correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so another detail I'm noticing is, again, we have a bit of a slant like
Mhm.
that.
Some kind of bevel, yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, instead of just taking this edge and moving it down left, it would take a lot of time. What I love about Maya is you can just press D, and this allows you to orient the pivot. And while you're in this mode, you can click on basically anything to, you can see the cursor says align. So if I click on this face, it will align the pivot with the orientation of this face. Now it puts it here in the middle, but if I hold V to snap to vertex and grab the Z-axis, which is local to this face, I can snap it to this edge. And if I go back to my move mode, you can see now we're only moving it in the direction of this face, which is really, really, really convenient.
This is worse than learning Czech for me.
Oh, come on, it's not that bad.
You're doing a good job. I'm just slow.
He clicks those keys like playing piano.
Right?
I'm doing my best to slow down. But yeah,
I mean, with it's something so natural for you.
exactly.
You've been
It's kind of difficult.
I actually had a similar thing when I used to instruct driving truck, and I would show people like how to drive manual transmission. Sometimes people wouldn't get the concept, so I would
Yeah.
switch and let them just kind of observe me for a second. I would try to say, "Oh, like this is how you could mess up a shift," and I'd go and try to mess up the shift. It would just go into gear. I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know how to mess up anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So
After a certain point, it's very, very.
yeah,
difficult.
like for you, it's just all this is just second nature at this point. Like
Exactly.
riding a bike almost, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I'll show you the tool that I use 80% of the time, my trusted multicut. This is basically mostly all you need to
Kind
be
of
a
a hack, isn't it?
3D artist. I mean, it's in the name. It's a multicut. So the great thing about multicut is, as the name implies, you can do multiple things with it. That's kind of strange. It behaves different on this PC for some reason. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So with my multicut selected, if I hold Control, it will allow me to create a loop. And if I hold Control and Shift, it basically judges the distance between the vertices on the edge that you're hovering. So you can very accurately put a cut on the halfway or the quarter way, or, you know, it goes in, I don't know the exact increments, but you get the idea. Whereas if I hold control, it's more like freeform. Very convenient tool. Or you could just click and, you know, it's up to you.
I'm sitting here nodding along like I know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that makes
so
sense.
the reason I'm doing it is
Mhm.
because we need to make this pillar.
Ah, okay.
So we want to extrude it from the existing shape.
I see. So you're going to basically make a new poly right there.
Exactly.
And then pull. Ah, okay.
So we will cut somewhere along there. And if we're not happy with our selection, I can hold shift and right click and go to my slide edge tool and just slide it later. But I typically try to not rely on it too much. So I would say I'm happy with the selection. So yeah, with our newly created polygon, we're just gonna extrude it, go to world space, hold V to snap to vertex. I know that this line on the truck is the halfway point in the world space. So I'll snap it there, and I'll just make sure to delete the inside face because I don't want it to linger. And we have, so far, the basics of our bumper.
So there's a ton of tools here that allow you to just like really streamline the process rather than having to make individual polys and put them all together
Yeah.
like Lego. It's just like start here, grab here, pull from here. Like it's much
Exactly, yeah.
much more.
But I would
streamlined.
say this looks a little bit daunting at first when you open Maya, especially with different panels and sub-menus. But realistically, you won't use 90% of it, especially if you're modeling. Aside from your primitives here, what you're really going to be using is your multi-cut here. Sometimes the target weld is very useful. Slide edge here. And here in Edit Mesh, a few of these tools, you know. So like these 3 panels that
Mhm.
I'm hovering over are 80% of your workflow. Sometimes with the mesh display to tweak the normals, but we are not going to get into it right now.
We
So-
actually have a couple questions from
Sure.
Coffee Guy 66. The first one is about laser scanning,
Yeah.
about laser scanning it and just importing the whole thing and just throwing it in game. But we would end up with millions
No,
and
we
millions of
actually
polys, right?
use laser scanning.
Mhm.
We have a professional photogrammetry and scanning expert in our department.
Mhm.
And his role is to go out on the field
Right.
and take references of real world vehicles, either through laser scanning or through photogrammetry in the cases that we can secure the CAD data.
But
However,
if we were to import that directly
it's
into
not
the
possible.
game, it would be like
it's impossible.
Yeah.
No game engine could run that.
yeah.
Like even if
Nobody
you were
is
to
doing
throw it
that.
into Unreal Engine 5 with Nanite or whatever have you there, you would still get horrible performance. You want to optimize as much as possible in a real-time rendering application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a second question, and I think it's a very, very relevant question. Is does the software regularly save your progress?
You can turn on autosave,
Okay.
but if you've noticed, after every command I do, I hit the Control S, because things can
Just in case. Just in
yeah,
case.
Yeah,
Because you never know
yeah.
what could
You
happen.
just want to be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we have the rough dimensions here, for myself as being, I guess, the co-designer of this bumper, I can see the dimensions aren't quite right.
Okay. So what
Overall.
could we improve?
So the first thing I would say is the top part is maybe not quite high enough. If you look in the reference photo that you have there, it's
Mhm.
kind of going just about to the bottom
Yeah,
of the
you're
Kenworth
right.
logo.
Yeah. So we can
So-
very easily fix that. And your first instinct might be to just grab this part and move it up, but that's not correct because now we've modified the shape. But we will select all the vertices.
Mhm.
Hit D for the align.
Mhm.
We're just going to align it here. Maybe I'll just snap it there. And now if I move it, you see we're retaining our
Okay.
shape. So now I can better match it to our reference, which should be something like that.
This is the part of the process. Normally, it's much more finished by normally it's pretty much finished, and then I come in and I'm like, oh, can you fix this, this, and this, and then guys
Which
like
is much
him-
harder actually because the more detailed your mesh is, the more difficult it is to
Yeah.
make these sort of rudimentary changes to it. That's why the blockout phase is the most important, because it really allows you to nail those proportions.
So really, the next time we're working on something, I should just sit beside you the whole time and tell you everything you're doing wrong.
Not the whole side, but
Oh,
I would
okay.
say there should be more of a process where the model goes through several iterations.
Okay.
Right, a lot of the guys in our department, they already work with really good reference data, but in these cases, I would say that could be a better approach, is where you have more feedback throughout the whole process of
Right.
modeling, right? So you do the blockout first, and then you can check whether the proportions and the dimensions are accurate,
Okay.
and then we would proceed with the detailing.
Cool.
Because the detailing takes the most time, and it's the most tedious. But if you get your blockout wrong, then all of that is just wasted effort.
So another thing, if the center upright pillars, if we could move them just a little bit closer together,
These ones? Or-
the center ones, like the
this
yeah,
one.
these the big ones, yeah.
So you want this to be more like that.
Oh, a little more. Right there.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm loving that. I'm loving the look of that. What do you
Yeah.
think, chat? How are we looking so far? What is your feedback on this bumper? And maybe you guys can let us know, even on that original reference there that Andy has popped out on the left there. Like, what do you guys think of that design overall? Because that was something me and Stendo worked out for a couple days, periodically. And we were quite proud of how it turned out. It's like kind of quite different from anything else that's on the market, and we thought we were quite proud of it. Air Cruise, no, we're not putting hood mirrors on the bumper. That's just, you're getting crazy now, okay? No, you're fired. But yeah, let us know what you think so far.
Someone has an interesting idea. To
What's that?
Put it to the tuning pack later.
Hmm.
What do we think about that?
Well, we'd have to take something out for sure.
Okay, I'll.
Yeah. So
You're,
what?
you're
What?
the
What part of
production
the?
coordinator.
Yeah, we'll just take some of the fenders out, or maybe a visor. No. That's an idea, though. We could talk about it.
Be a good consideration.
So everyone's quite positive. They all think it's looking quite good.
Okay, so we can continue with the next part here.
Mhm.
We still have a little bit left of the blockout phase to do. So we can see we have some cylinders going here.
Mhm.
They're quite simple, so I'll just do them detailed from the start.
Now here's a question: we had that other bumper in there. Could we just like copy and paste those cylinders? Is that possible?
We could, but
Of course,
I
we
mean,
want to see how they're
typically-
made, but
exactly,
hypothetically,
yeah.
we could.
I'll be honest, that's what I do half the time, is just steel work from older
Are
models.
you hearing this, chat?
Shh, that's
what do
our
we pay
that's
this
our
guy
secret.
for?
Yeah, that's the secret of every 3D artist, is
Yeah.
that sometimes we tend to be a bit lazy and just take existing work. If it fits the standard, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So
That's
yeah, I
true,
could
yeah.
perfectly just duplicate this and say like, oh, I'm finished, but
Mhm.
I'll just do it from scratch. But the reason I have this reference here to begin with is so that I know what my model should
Like the scale of
match.
it, kinda,
Exactly, yeah. Not just the scale, but the technical specifications of it, because I want to make sure that you can see, if we unlock this, if I grab the edges of the cylinder, it will tell me here that I currently have 11. 11?
It's an odd number, literally.
Okay. Is it really? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, it is. Okay. Typically, we would like this to be 12, so I'm just going to ignore the reference. Yeah, so we can just start with a primitive again. I'll just click on the cylinder, and I will hold V to snap it to vertex, so I can just move it to where I'm working right now.
Mhm.
Scale it up so I can see what I'm doing.
So it's just like this is just something that Maya has in its stock.
Yeah,
like
the
you chose the cube before, now you've just chosen a generic cylinder.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
they're called primitive shapes
Okay.
in your poly modeling tab. And then while you have your basics still set up, there's an input here for the poly cylinder.
Mhm.
We can see the options. So we have the subdivision axis. It's currently a 20, which is too much for us. We don't want that. We want 12.
Because we want even numbers and not 11.
Yeah, because think about if you're potentially making an LOD for it,
Mhm.
the next step would be 6, right? Because if you,
Oh.
yeah, it's better to always have even numbers.
Now,
I
do you
don't know.
do you really quickly want to explain what an LOD is for those that
It's
might
a
not
level
know?
of detail. It's basically a simplified mesh for rendering in the distance,
Mhm.
so that the way it works in the game is if you have something close by you, it's on the LOD 0, which is the highest quality, and then the further the camera is away from that object, the model switches to a more low poly version of it
Mhm.
to basically save on polygons,
Yeah, I remember
so that we
playing
can render more things on
yeah.
the screen at once.
I remember playing like old video games and like, the game would be lagging a little bit because my system was quite crap.
Yeah.
And, I would be like basically driving faster than the world could load. So I'd end up in this weird no man's land with like no
Exactly,
detail. And
yeah.
it's just these buildings and stuff that are meant to be there to represent the silhouettes of the city skyline in the distance. But, obviously don't want to render those at full detail and just cost performance for no reason, right? So
Exactly.
that's kind of what we do as well.
Yeah. And another great reason I have the reference model here
Mhm.
is so that I can more accurately judge the size of these cylinders.
But we
'Cause
could go bigger or smaller if we wanted to,
that's
right?
true.
This is
Yeah,
our
we're
own
not
design.
exactly. So, but I think as a starting point, it's nice to have it like that.
That's true.
So I'll just, for now, match it. And then we want it a little bit more inwards because our design is a bit different
Mhm.
from the existing model. So I'll just place it like that. And if we toggle off the wireframe, you can see our cylinder. It's very blocky, looks kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put a Fong on it. So we don't want that. It's kind of ugly. So I'll just grab it, go to mesh display, soften the edges.
So now,
Magic.
did this just add polys?
No,
by
it
doing
didn't.
that?
No, it didn't. I'm not going to get into the technical details too much because it'll be like speaking check to you.
Okay.
But technically, what it does is every edge has several hidden vertices to it, which basically tell the light how to reflect. So when you harden the edge, it will reflect it sharply, and when you soften it, it will reflect it smoothly. So that's as simple as I can explain it.
Next time, say it in Czech, and I'll understand it just as much. But thank you for the explanation. We have a message from Trevor here in the chat who says this is his favorite live stream so far, and he would love to see more of this in the future.
Yeah, if there's a lot of interest from the community, we could do it. I also saw some people wish for a map design stream as well. I honestly think you
Oh.
guys should do that.
That would be cool.
You guys should definitely do that. I think it would be
Benny,
very
write-
relaxing.
Write that down on the spreadsheet.
We already talked about it last time, but I think things were kind of
Dude, I'm like a goldfish, honestly,
Yeah.
half the time.
No, but I think these kind of development insight streams would just give people a lot more insight into what our process is, how we work, why things are the way they are. You know, it's very easy to judge things from the outside, but honestly, working on games, it's a very difficult task that requires the synchronization of multiple departments and
Absolutely.
a consideration for the technical limitations.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a science on its own, so I think people will find a lot of value in that. So yeah, for the bottom one, we're just gonna duplicate it, and because I know that it needs to follow this, I don't want to do multiple